Well, hello and good afternoon. I am Rob, that developer dad, and it is Thursday, October 31st, Halloween, and I am continuing to work through the thinking about designing and planning exercises that I like to go through whenever I need to build a new piece of software. And a few weeks ago, I put a pin in the DM's familiar because I think it's finally at a place, at least in terms of its features, its look and its feel and so on, where it's just about ready to launch. Now, I do have some more work to do before I can actually launch. I want to swap out the data storage technology I'm using. Currently, I'm using a free tier of Azure SQL Database, and I get like 100,000 free processing seconds per month, and beyond that I have to pay for it. But and that's really great for development purposes, but I've tried to demo it to some people, and it takes like up to a minute to warm up and start to respond because the database goes to sleep after a period of inactivity and stuff, and it's just not great. Don't get me wrong, SQL is a fantastic storage medium. If you need relational stuff, go ahead and use it. There are less expensive options than Azure SQL Database. There's Postgres Flexible Server. There's like a flexible MySQL, flexible MariaDBs available in Azure. But I'm actually going to roll over to something a little bit simpler, and it's going to be Azure Table Storage, which is basically a NoSQL data store, and it's cheap and it's fast and it's going to suit my needs. So I do need to do some refactoring of my resource access components in the DM's familiar project to use that storage mechanism instead of SQL. I'm going to have to rewrite a few components, but it shouldn't be too bad because I can rewrite those components without affecting the rest of the application. Pretty sweet. Now, how did I get that level of flexibility? Well, I did some architecture. I did some planning. I made sure that the components that are in charge of storing and retrieving resources are kind of separated off and have their own representation, and then share a public contract with the rest of the application. Now, this reimplementation going from SQL to Azure Table Storage, I'm going to be able to rewrite it, or I'm going to be able to do that without changing the public contracts on the resource access components. And that means I have successfully isolated that kind of change from the rest of my system. And that's pretty sweet. So how do we get there? Well, it requires some thought and some planning and some thinking and some design work. And I took a little bit of a detour from doing my design for this AdminSystem mid last week, and I developed a utility that can execute rules, and those rules get stored and transmitted as just data types. Nothing executable. They're basically stringly typed. And I built a utility class that takes in one of these rule definitions, which is fully serializable, and converts it into an executable instance of some code. And that really opened up a lot of possibilities in terms of making a flexible validation engine for the objects that I'm going to need to validate and performing the administrative use cases for running the DM's familiar. I got back into the detailed design for this AdminSystem this morning, and I was scatterbrained. I was all over the damn place, and just I felt like I had my head stuck up my butt. So this afternoon, I'm going to take a step back from documenting those things and create some quick sequence diagrams. Well, probably not so quick, but I'm going to create a sequence diagram that describes how data will flow through the different components of my system. And I'm going to use this diagramming exercise as a way of refining my thoughts, spotting issues in my architecture, coming up with things that I've forgotten about, while doing the static design aspects so that I can more efficiently and more quickly actually build out the system once I've got my head in the right place. So let's share my screen. I'm going to use Draw.io for this. It's a free tool that I've found online. I've been using this for years. And I want to create not a swim lane or a flow chart or entity relationship. I want a sequence diagram. Let's go ahead and create that. And can I zoom in? I'm going to zoom in. Whoops. I believe there's move. Move is under the right click and drag. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of text. I'm going to pull this guy up here and just kind of paste him in here. And I want to pull these guys. Whoops. This stuff, I'm just going to scooch it down the diagram a little bit and give myself a bit more gutter space. There we go. And I need to collapse. Well, I'm not going to collapse general yet. Data flow. For modify subscription. And I believe we've got a collection of the use cases. So I'm going to pop open a new window in Safari. Here we go. Let's go to GitHub. Let's go to GitHub. And we'll go into TDMF admin. The DM's familiar admin. Docs. And let's look at use cases. All right. Let's go into component details and account manager, because this gives us a more complete listing of the use cases that we're going to, or of the behaviors that we are going to need to create. So let's actually start with create customer profile. For create customer profile. And dispatch, okay. So here I'm going to say admin API. Yep. Admin API. This is going to be account manager. And let's grab this object. And say customer builder. And we'll zoom out a bit because I'm a little too close. And we'll pull this over here. And I'm going to come over to here and say customer resource access. And I want to put these on different lines just for just for niceties. And of course, C. Nope, I'm not going to use those. I'm going to use... Do I want to use a cloud shape for this? I suppose I do. Entra. And I'm going to shrink that down. That's a little big. Here we go. And app storage. I'm just going to leave that intentionally vague. Now I need a dotted line. And it's going to start at Entra and just run down vertically. Vertically, I said. I'm going to copy, paste that guy, and attach it to the application's storage. And let's make sure it's connected. By disconnecting, reconnecting, and this guy, he needs to scooch over just a hair. There we go. So, we have our thing now. What I want to do now is put in the regions, the conceptual regions of execution. Or sort of the conceptual context of where these things live within the, I guess, mental model of the static architecture. And this region is going to be I need a dark green. How does that look? I want to send it to back. Yeah, that looks fine. And then, of course, our managers, or the manager context, is going to get a dark orange. Let's see if I can find one. Here we go. And finally, we've got our resource access, which will get a dark blue. Like, I want a really dark blue. Now, you know what? That one's good enough. It'll work. And all three of you guys are going to the back. To back. Here we go. Now, let's pull this guy. No, we're going to just pull you up like so. And I'm going to edit the text. Clients. And we'll bump your font. Push you off to the left. And bring it up to the top. I can never remember where that is in this thing here. Text. And you need to go to the top. There we go. And then we've got our managers. And we're going to glue you together. And the customer builder will exist within the context of our manager layer. Because it's going to need access to multiple resource access components here. There we go. Now, this guy. And let's send that to the top and the left and make it white. Do I want to make it white? No. I think white's going to be... Yeah, if I change this to white... Oh, yeah, that's a war crime. Let's go back to black. And I'm going to go black here, too. Apply. Resource access. And we're going to go black on this as well. Apply. All three of these are going to the top and the left. Bold. Let's go to 16 and black text. Apply. That's a little hard to read on the black, isn't it? I also want to push that in from the left a little bit. Manager, classes, resource access, classes, and resources. There we go. All right, so create customer profile. When you're dispatching to here, it comes into the admin API. We are not going to have a callback. That would be goofy. Not in this layer anyway. But dispatch the account manager is going to have nope, I don't want that kind of arrow. Here we go. Come on. I don't know why my mouse is being such a git. It might be low on battery. So this end of the arrow, you know, this thing just does not want to behave itself today. Yeah. For some goofy reason. All right, so the admin API is going to go to the account manager. It's going to pass some information. And it is going to be think how this is going to behave. So when is this going to happen? This is going to happen after somebody signs up for signs up as a new user to my system. Now they haven't subscribed yet, here we go. So sets up a user profile for a newly signed up user. As that user to the free group in Entra. Do I have any additional details down here in nerd stuff? I do not. Okay. Do we have any information about it in Account Manager? Create customer profile. Accepts a customer data object, uses it to provision a new customer profile. Returns either the newly provisioned customer profile or an exception. Okay. So this dispatch is going to become manager dot customer data. That's important to remember. And then in UML, I bet if I zoom in, it'll be a little easier to manipulate this stuff. UML, where's my arrow connectors? Good Lord. Implementation, terminate, aggregate, composition, association. Aggregation, dispatch. You're going to attach that here to here. There we go. Build customer. And then I need another one of these. And it is going to be what even is going on here? Here we go. You gonna let me do this now? There we go. Now, build customer will have mgr dot cust data. Dispatch will be load customer. Resource dot cust data, and it's going to return with this thing is driving me nuts today. Okay, let's pull you up. Glue that over here. It's going to return with a RSC dot customer profile. And that customer profile might be empty. Actually, you know what? It's going to be nullable. And then, of course, if null, it's going to build. Actually, it's going to create. So I need to grab a subprocess, self-call. If null, create customer. And then it's going to do a message. To store customer. Resource dot customer profile. So RSC cust data. You know what? This is not going to be nullable, because what's going to happen is this create customer call is going to be because of an activity that actually happened in Entra outside of this admin system. Create customer profile. Manage your customer data, manage your customer data. This converts it to a resource customer data. I need a activation right here. And we're just going to align this like so. Activation like this over here. Pull it over here. Like so, and we're going to pull you all the way down. And we've got a found message going from customer resource access. Let's glue you on here and glue you on here. Get user ID. I'm going to scooch this up even tighter. And this returns and I gotta scooch that whole thing down a bit. Graph.user object. This stuff I need to bring down this way, like so. You, my little friend, you're coming down here. Come on, there we go. This found message, you need to run down this way. Graph user. Now I need another found message. customer, user ID, another found message, which needs to go the other direction. Oh, stop that. You goose. There we go. And we can push you up this way. Returns a RSC.CustomerProfile nullable. And that goes back this way. Like so. This message passes through to here. I gotta grab my activation bar and extend it a little bit. Grab this activation bar and extend it a little bit. And then I need to grab this, copy and paste, pull it down. This will not be null. And I'm going to copy and paste it again. Whoops. Want this. Can I grab it? Did I create two? Nope. Z, copy, paste it again. Oh, what are you doing, you silly goose? All these drawing applications are so frequently just a fight. And this callback, I don't need it. Do need to pull this down. All right. And I gotta extend this guy. And this. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. We return it. Come on. mgr.custProfile. mgr.custProfile. And that's about it. That's that for that process. So we're going to be getting a dispatch from somewhere. It could be the DM's familiar client. It could possibly be Entra via webhook eventually, but it's going to call CreateCustomerProfile on the admin API, which is going to pass the inbound data into the account manager. It's going to pass that off to the customer builder, who's going to try to load the customer based on the ID in this customer data. Because none of this is going to happen until the user has created their identity within Microsoft Entra and is signed into the application. And so this is essentially going to be fetch or create. And I just want to grab this and pull it out like so. And we'll pull it over like this. And we're going to save this. Save. Come on. As let's see, here's the SaaS admin thing. Oh, I don't even have that yet. That's okay. Let's make a new folder. SaaS admin diagrams. Create. And this is use case sequence. Use case sequences. Save. And there we go. And I can actually grab this, pull it up a little tighter, pull this up a little tighter, and pull this up also a little tighter. But let's make them parallel, shall we? There we go. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Now, what implications does this diagram have for the stuff in our system? Well, let's pop open the Customer Access Manager, or the Customer Access, the Customer Resource Access, Resource Access thingy. Let's edit. Interfaces. Classes. Customer. Those are properties. customer has a customer profile, has a subscription, has a subscription history, and I might make that subscription history an inner property of subscription. It will also have IDs. This is will contain a collection of IDs that are collection of the IDs that are associated with this customer object in the various third-party systems will integrate with. Currently only Entra and Lemon Squeezy. If I ever migrate from Lemon Squeezy to something else or migrate from Entra to something else, we're still going to need to retain those IDs. Each ID will have a vendor name and the ID value. Properties dot ID going to use the Entra ID as the primary identifier for each customer within the system. Theoretically, if I'm using something else, if I'm using an integer for user ID, then I'm going to need to do something different. But I'm pretty sure I'm using the Entra ID throughout, so that ought to be fine. We're still going to keep Entra and then the Entra ID in the IDs collection. Profile, customer profile, and let's make properties bold. And I want to add the double spaces to make sure I got my line breaks. Good. Let's save the work. Okay. I gotta go back to edit mode because I goofed something up here. Customer properties. There we go. Customer IDs. Customer profile holds the information that we need to display. We need to either share with third-party service providers or gets displayed in the application. Keep PII to the absolute minimum here. Subscription. Contains the subscription object for this customer. And I'm going to say customer subscription. Contains the subscription information for a given customer. Contains a list of subscription actions that have been taken over the course of the current subscription period. Current subscriptions lifetime, i.e. renewal, pause, resume, cancellation, etc. Save and commit. Let's see what we've got. I have to go back in and fix that up because I goofed it. Customer access. Okay, let's go back into edit because I do need to fix up that customer access interface. What you doing, robot? I'm over here, buddy. Oh, that silly thing. What are you doing? I'm right here, goofball. All right, so load customer. This will be methods. Oops, can't have spaces around that. And this will return customer access dot abstractions dot customer load customer. And this will be nullable string ID. queries entra, uses MS graph provider to query entra for the information that is available there. Uses the same ID to query the app storage customer collection. Yeah. And then we've got, come on. And this will, I need to pop over here. And over on this side, I gotta change customer profile that comes back from customer resource access to just the customer type. There we go. Save that. That's really jumbly. I'm going to fix this up a bit. Let's pull you down this way. And I'm going to zoom in a bit. You, my little friend, we're just going to make you a little bit longer. Pull you down that way. Yeah. And save. Cool. Now this is going to behave a little bit differently than is specified here, because the customer resource access is actually going to use a, I'm going to build not really an internal, but I'm going to build a MS Graph Entra access library that I'm going to use for this. And I'm going to make that open source, of course. And then over here, I'm going to use a customer access library. I'm going to build a customer CRUD thing against Azure Table Storage. I'll make that part open source as well on its own, just to demonstrate how to store basically blobs or structured blobs in Azure Table Storage. So yeah, this could get really, really interesting, because I'm not used to thinking in terms of hierarchical data structures. I'm more used to thinking in terms of relational, because that's the world I've been living in for the past 20 plus years. So moving from SQL to this is going to be a very interesting little exercise for me. It'll be a neat bit of mental push-ups. Oh, excuse me. Goodness gracious. All right, so that's that. And this is much tidier than it was. Much, much tidier. Let's come back to documenting. So we've got methods: customer access, abstractions.customer, load customer. And I'm going to go ahead and customer access dot abstractions dot iCustomer access. We also need store customer. And I need to do it a little differently. Control C, V, and this will not return a nullable. Store customer, customer, customer. Any properties in the profile that have changed and are stored in Entra will be updated. The incoming customer will have its changes applied to the existing, to the customer instance that is in storage. The customer will be reloaded after those operations complete and be returned to the caller. There we go. And this is just in the abstractions. Customer IDs. All right, customer profile. PII to the absolute minimum here. And it will have display name, dot. I think I want to bullet point these guys. Yeah. So, profile will include the display name, Entra groups, no, we're keeping that in Entra. And other properties that make sense to store here for efficiency's sake. We might not want to query Entra every time we make a call to the ecom API. querying Entra will be my first strategy, though, because if it works and isn't too slow, I'ma keep it. Save. And I have done enough documentation today. So, Entra ID is the primary identifier for each customer within the system. Customer IDs, okay. Customer profile. I do need to edit that. Here. Preview. Make sure it doesn't look crappy. We might not want to query Entra. Okay, cool. Come on, customer subscription. Down here under customer profile, I need to properties. Save. All right. And finally, there's all this commentary down here. Can I just surround the whole shebang with strikeout? Nope, that won't work. Edit. Yeah. There we go. Subscription history, good deal. So right now we just have these two methods. We've got load customer and store customer. And that's plenty for now. As I work through the other use cases, I don't know why the robot is being a goofball. I'm right here. As I work through the remaining use cases, I'll come back and revise and add methods to this interface specification. And these are really just notes that I want to have. Now, the danger here, I'm really running into an internal conflict here. I really want to provide this kind of documentation. But as soon as I get coding, I'm going to start discovering things that I didn't quite think through correctly, or make changes or improve my design and so on and so forth. And I know me, I am not going to come back and update this documentation as I make those changes. So I think I have almost enough to have established, or at least signposted myself here. I think it's vertical slice time. Now, I'm not going to actually implement any of this stuff in the vertical slice. I'm going to stand up the projects. I'm going to stand up some of the interfaces. They're not going to have a whole lot of stuff, formal stuff on them. Because those interfaces are going to be added to as we go through this process. I'm going to do the detailed design sort of as I go. But I feel like I've got enough to actually do the create or fetch or create customer use case here, because that's really what that's turned into, is fetch or create. Yeah, I'm going to change this to load or create customer profile. Save. So yeah, I've got enough to be able to implement this all the way out through the stack. I don't have a full view of what the data types look like, but I can at least flesh out the calls from component to component to component, even if it's just passing empty DTOs or skeletal DTOs. That, yeah, I've got enough to start working on this. And before I really start digging into the actual business logic and the storage schemas and all of that stuff, there's a piece that I'm missing here in my making of software happen. And that's that I've got, like, to date, I've just had a practice of essentially I've been very good about coding against interfaces. But what I really ought to be doing whenever I'm calling from one of these colored blocks to another isn't just coding against an interface, but against coding to a proxy of that interface, or a proxy to that interface. And when I start doing that, it really opens me up to future flexibility in terms of deployment, because when I need to change between hosting my resource access components in process to hosting those resource access components in private services, if I ever need to go there, the only thing that needs to change at that point is which type of proxy I use. And that's pretty cool. But I need to figure out how. I know there are a lot of people out there that do that have that practice, but I really need to find some good examples of that proxy pattern that proxy pattern as implemented within modern C# and .NET Core. There's a ton of examples out there under WCF, but I need to see something in .NET Core to really wrap my head around what is happening at the concrete code level. I understand it conceptually, but I haven't been able to visualize the code to make that happen yet. So I'm going to do a Google search to try and find some examples of how I can actually start treating each of these components as a service, whether there's a network between them or if they're existing in the same process space or even on the same heap. I want to figure that out, because a modular monolith is kind of what I prefer to build these days, rather than immediately targeting microservices. And all a modular monolith is it's a monolithic application that is internally designed as if it's a service-oriented architecture. It's just all of the services are hosted in the same application process and app domain as the front-end application, or the API, I should say. And that's where I want to go with this. There's other ways to slice the cake. I've seen people just do this way. So our public API is a web API in an Azure App Service. It might have a domain stuck in front of it. It's open to the public. And then the back-end services that are being hosted in a private app service or a container app or what have you, they might have a very thin, minimal API in front of them that just exposes the public methods on the manager interfaces. I've seen that done as well. And all of these approaches are perfectly valid. It's all about choosing the approach that is the most correct and beneficial for all of the circumstances of what you're trying to build. And we'll discuss that. That's a long, long discussion. We're going to touch on those topics. We have been touching on those topics all along with all of these videos I've done. But I'm sure it'll come up again. And if you have questions, hit me up in the comments on the video, what have you. I'm always happy to get comments and feedback. And I do my best to reply as soon as I see that I've gotten some of those. So until tomorrow, happy coding. Be safe out there tonight. There's fairies and witches and ghoulies on the loose. So watch out for them. Give them some candy. And I will see you all tomorrow. Happy Halloween.